right, so my name is Matt Marsiglia. I'm the EANS program manager for ClassWallet, and we are now in our 7th episode. So I appreciate everybody who's still tuning in and learning more about this amazing program for non-public schools. Laura, I want to give you a quick introduction for yourself before we get started.
Yes, my name is Laura Mazyck. I'm with the Florida Department of Education. I serve as the Deputy Executive Director in the Office of Independent Education and Parental Choice here in Tallahassee.
Thank you, Laura. And Laura, it's been a crazy journey that we've been on. It's been now 2 years since you've been with ClassWallet. I guess 2 years in May. You guys started EANS I in May 2021. You guys are now rounding the finish line. We have just a couple, 2, 3, 4 months left for EANS funds to be spent. Mm-hmm. You guys have done an amazing job managing the program. And now here we are at the deadline. We still have a little bit of money left on the table. And I think today we want to talk about is a few ideas for schools to spend the funds. And then from your perspective, we can share how you feel about this. And then we'll go into some quotes from some schools who were able to fill out a survey and how they were able to use their funds. And we'll talk about that as well. But happy to hear where we're at right now.
Agreed.
So prior to the pandemic, as we mentioned from episode 6, a lot of the schools lagged current technological trends, and EANS has been a great resource to utilize those funds for education technology and providing students with that one-to-one device initiative. Outside of educational technology, what are a few areas schools can focus on for long-term planning, Laura?
So I have been thinking, of course, EdTech is the big one. And I would love to see schools continue to utilize that opportunity. But looking ahead, I wanted to talk about something that's unique here in Florida. And that is we just last month had House Bill 1 that was signed into law, which expands our voucher programs here in Florida. So that changes the landscape. And so what I would hope to see is that those schools that are on this webinar, and you have sister schools, that we have many of you that step up to the plate, meaning that we know that we're going to have a lot more scholarship students throughout the state, which means that we're a little concerned about the supply and demand. So what I would hope and anticipate would happen with some of these funds is that our schools would utilize this to perhaps set yourselves apart. So one thing that we talked about in a previous ClassWallet coffee break was creating those STEM labs within your schools. And I know that some of you have reached out and made comments about how that had really increased student learning, it got kids excited. But continue to think down those avenues of creating a STEM lab, something like that to set yourselves apart. We know that a lot of the mitigation for COVID is moot now, so we don't see a lot of schools that are spending dollars on, sanitation necessarily. I mean, certainly that's still a concern, but you're not spending your dollars mainly towards that. Another way that I think would be beneficial for our schools is continuing to utilize those service providers. I know that the two biggies, I think, in Florida are Catapult and Fax. Use those companies if that fits in your agenda to help mitigate learning loss.
Thanks, Laura. Definitely. Catapult Fax, definitely two of the largest vendors for EANS in general for service, and great for learning loss, as you mentioned, tutoring and counseling and things like that, especially for kids that have suffered that loss during the COVID pandemic and then get back up to speed. Going forward with things that how are you able to continue things after the grant cycle is done? I know we talk about disposition guidance and liquidation, and technically the products are owned by the state according to the guidelines. And I know a lot of schools are nervous about that. So if you want to speak a little bit about how are schools able to continue to use the products after the grant cycle is over?
Right. Well, there was some federal guidance that did come out. I mean, we all know that technology becomes out of date within 2 years. So by the time these grant cycles are over and a 5-year period, they're not going to have a lot of value to them. So the state agencies do have that allowability to allow schools to continue to use the items that you put in place. And we have every intention in Florida of allowing our schools to continue to use, some of the devices and things that you have purchased. But just to segue just a little bit, we are finally working towards the disposition of some of those items. So those of you that are on this webinar will be getting some communication from an outside company through the Florida State University called Learning Systems Institute. Many of you who were, you may recall when you applied for ARP funding, the second round of funding, that we utilized an outside application link that was also through Learning Systems Institute. So they have graciously stepped up and created a way of inventorying those items that you have purchased. So that said, they'll be reaching out to all of your schools and asking you to help verify some of the inventory. And they'll be checking that against the ClassWallet, what's been put into ClassWallet and what's been purchased. So just keep a lookout for that. You'll be getting that again from Learning Systems Institute, and it's very important that you respond to it.
Thank you for that, Laura. I'm going to go ahead and transition into a quick few quotes that we recently gathered. We did a survey at ClassWallet. ClassWallet, we manage about 20% of the total funds of the program. And the folks on the call probably know it's a $5.5 billion program, and we manage about 1.2 billion of those dollars. And so we've seen, thousands of schools really benefit from these funds. And now that we're 75% of the grant, I think it would be good for us to share some of the feedback from the schools. And also maybe you could also, piggyback off Laura, what you're saying, and get some new ideas for the leftover money that's still not spent today. Okay. This is from Soul Academy. Mariah, she said, upgrading our technology across the board has been a super plus to our students' learning experience. It has also given our teaching staff the ability to take their teaching methods to the next level, whereas our students are impacted and excited about learning.
That's fantastic. Yes, I'm very familiar with Soul Academy. So that's really good news. And as we know, pre-pandemic, our schools, our public schools even, were hard pressed to pivot to any type of online learning, and that very much contributed to this 2 years of student learning loss, basically. Mm-hmm. So we're ready for God forbid anything we ever have to pivot again like we did 2 years ago. But what I would encourage is for those of you who are utilizing this technology and getting your kids excited about it. And Matt and I were talking yesterday about the idea of using acceleration in conjunction with remediation. So there's been a lot of discussion these past 2 years about learning loss and students, losing 2 years of direct instruction. But think about in your classrooms of maybe infusing something that might be a little more accelerated for some of those students that don't necessarily need remediation, because there's been lots of studies out there that show that students will rise to the level that you present to them. And so I would just encourage those of you that have this technology now available, and when you're doing that face-to-face instruction, maybe think about looking at some an online course that's maybe an accelerated course. Purchase something, use your dollars for that. So anyway, yeah, this is good news. Yay, Soul Academy.
Thanks, Laura. And this is from Sacred Heart Catholic. Arsenio said, we were able to use the funding for desks with whiteboard tops. This allows teachers to place students in groups depending on reading and math abilities for differentiated instruction. The STEM labs provide a space for engaging in hands-on activities for the students to discover solutions to real-world problems. Laura, you've already mentioned STEM once. That seems to be a really hot topic with the EANS funding.
It is a hot topic, and it really segues these students into Florida's push for that workforce education that that has been that we're seeing in our high schools. So this is exciting, and again, a way that our private schools can meet that demand for the proliferation of scholarship students that we're going to see, because now scholarships are open to everybody, anybody in the state of Florida. So we know that a lot of our families are going to want to stay right where they are in the public school that they're assigned to, and that's great. But those families that are looking for something more, they're going to be looking for something, as Matt calls, out of the box. They're going to be looking for those STEM labs. They're going to be looking for acceleration. So just think of ways that you can make yourselves more marketable.
And the last quote we have, we actually have a lot more quotes. We're going to be sharing a website. So everybody on the call and who registered for this webinar, we'll be sending out a link to a lot more quotes that we've gotten from teachers and principals across the country. So we'll be sharing that with you guys. But Cindy at Glad State School, the single greatest impact the EANS funding provided for our school was improved test scores through services. And again, you've already mentioned two of the big players in the country that are big EANS service providers, but services seem to be one of the number one categories that schools are using to use EANS funds.
Yes, that's fantastic. And we have every intention of allowing these funds to be used now right up until the 11th hour, because we were in the beginning given instruction to start winding this down in June in order to close it out by September. And now with the additional guidance from USAID, it is our intention to continue to use it through September. So, start, continuing those contracts with your service providers. Think about upgrading that technology that for potential growth that you're going to see. Another thing is leasing spaces. So, maybe think about if there's an adjacent space next where your private school is located. You might want to take a leap of faith and think about utilizing some additional space just for the students that you're going to see coming in this fall.
That's very good. Thanks, Laura. So I think the last question we'll have today, then we'll take on some Q&A from the guests in the audience. We've talked about technology. That's a huge one. Services, you just mentioned lease spaces. And again, we talk about outside the box ideas because everybody on the call likely still has funds left that they want to spend. You mentioned the Accelerate, Don't Remediate program. Is there anything else you want to add about any outside the box ideas to spend down the funds, Laura, before we turn it over to questions?
I don't know. I think that the three big things that I would, if the takeaways, is that, again, look at your students and remember that they will rise to the level that you give them. So I'm a firm believer in that theory of accelerate, not necessarily remediate. I would also, again, think about what can you do to set your school apart. If you're strong in the core subjects, then what can you do to do an add-on? We have a lot of schools that have added music programs because that's part of redeveloping instruction. Carve out a little magnet program within your school, just something that can make you unique, because that's what's going to be needed, I think, to make yourselves marketable. I think that's all. That's all I can think of.
Excellent. Well, I hope everybody's listening about the marketability of your school. It sounds that Florida has got a lot of new students potentially coming to the non-public education sector. So, I think it's a great time to make those the schools looking nice for new students, right?
Yeah.
So at this time, we would like to open it up to questions. I see we have a few questions already listed here. I see a couple questions that are very similar. So why don't we start with some of the deadlines specifically around services? I
Okay.
know Florida has a specific deadline, and you guys are talking about. You want to talk about your deadline in Florida specifically? Just let everybody know on the call. The national deadline is September 30th, and the law of the land says no contracts can go beyond the deadline. So that does cut you off for services at 9:30. Laura, you want to talk about the Florida specific deadline in which you guys are working with?
Well, we are going to go with that. As far as I know, I have not gotten any kind of permission to extend it beyond that. And since we do have quite a few funds here in Florida, I think it's going to be safer for us to do that liquidation period after September 30. But we will continue to take direct pay requests and reimbursement requests right up until the last hour.
Great to hear. That answers a couple of the questions I see. So Florida will be taking them through the end of the deadline. Let's see, Adriana asks, can you please clarify when to submit EANS I and ARPANES purchases or reimbursements? So ARPANES 2, that deadline is actually next year, September 30th, 2024.
Right.
So you still have a lot of time left on ARPANES. And of course, there's no reimbursements allowed for ARPANES. It's only payment to vendors. So reimbursements would be expiring on November 30th this year.
September 30th through EANS.
I'm sorry, my mistake. September 30th this year. Yes, thanks. Thank you. Let's see. Stephanie asks, can we utilize modular buildings? Laura, what do you think about that?
I think that we have approved some modular type buildings, just simply, for spacing purposes. We did that early on with EANS. I'm not going to say a yes or no on this webinar, but certainly send us what your vision is, and we'll take a look at it.
Thanks, Laura. I got one just came in from Terry. Looks like they are interested in the STEM lab from a vendor that has provided STEM labs in the past, but looks like this specific instance, they had some consumables, some training, some type of full service, and it wasn't a line-by-line invoice they provided. Any suggestions on how to have something like that approved? That sounds like a dig in and work with George and Savannah. I
think so. Or you know what? Whoever the requester is, was it Sacred Heart that did the STEM lab? I'm sorry, I have to go back and look at the reviews.
Yeah, let's.
I mean, feel free. Schools love to share. Reach out to a school that's done it successfully and see what they did.
Yeah, Arsenio got the card. That's correct. All right. Any more questions from the group? Somebody asked, would I be able to submit a proposal for initial approval and then the reimbursement request after the work is complete? I'm guessing they want to be pre-approved for something before. Do you guys work?
Absolutely. And that's a safe bet. So go ahead and send us something that you're anticipating doing, and we'll let you know pretty quickly.
Laura? All right. And most states, for the record, are the same way. They do like to work with the schools, and you would hate to try to submit a reimbursement for something that's not eligible, thinking it was eligible. So it's always best to play it safe with that in that realm.
Yeah.
Let's see. Somebody asked about EANS ending 9:30, how to utilize Catapult with leftover monies. Well, that's a good one. If you haven't used Catapult today and you have leftover money, how would you engage them between now and the deadline?
No, I'm not sure I understand the question.
Like they're asking how to utilize Catapult if they've never used them before, but they have money left over in their wallet. Maybe they want to use them. What would be the best first step to engage with them?
I would probably get with the Florida Division Director, Joan Gretus, I believe her name is. I'll be happy to send her contact information. I can get it to Matt if you want to get it to the requester.
Yeah, sounds good. Right. We can also forward the vendor contact on file we have. So they're usually pretty familiar how to handle the EANS quotes at Catapult. So let's see. We have a couple more questions come in. Can you talk a little bit more about music programs as an add-on? Can funds be used for instruments?
Yes, we have definitely approved instruments for folks that are creating, a music program. Certainly, there's a lot to be said for that in redeveloping instruction. So that's a yes. However, I would suggest that you go ahead and send in your proposal first. Let us take a look at it. Because, we have gotten invoices or requests for things that weren't necessarily student-centric in the way of musical instruments. So let us take a look at it. We'll be glad to help.
Thank you, Laura. Got a couple more questions coming in. If we lease a space, Dwayne asked, can initial payments be made under EANS I? And then once EANS I ends, can you continue those payments into EANS II?
Yes, and we have had schools that have done that. Of course, that you just have to make sure that whoever you're leasing from is set up as a vendor so we can pay them directly. But yes.
And you likely need to make 2 submissions, probably 1 submission for EANS I and then 1 submission for EANS II. Let's see. Karen asked, are school signs approved through EANS? Any outdoor signage? If you guys worked with that?
No.
Yeah, I don't think I saw that. Yeah. Let's see. Do you see any more questions, Laura? I think that we got through. Let's see. Someone was asking about book orders for digital resources was rejected. And the explanation was it can't be made before the digital resource subscription starts.
Okay. Yeah, we don't pay in advance, so that makes sense that it was rejected.
Okay. Let's see. One last question from Anna, who just came on a little late. Can broadcasting equipment be submitted? I'm not familiar with that one.
Broadcasting equipment. I'd have to see exactly what she's talking about. So Anna, go ahead and send that in to us and let us take a look at it.
Yeah. And again, for everybody that's on the call, we have Florida. Laura's the EANS program manager for all the EANS in Florida. And again, your state is specific to your state. So, please take these recommendations with a grain of salt because every state has different unique rules. Most states can kind of agree on most things, but however, it is the state's decision on whether they approve or reject things. And of course, ClassWallet does not make any approval decisions. That's all done by the state. We're the ones distributing the payments to the vendors for this program. Terry, one last question. Reach out to George about the STEM lab. It sounds like that George has been really good about responding to inquiries from schools, Terry. So I would say, yeah, George has been responding to, I believe, the EANS request for sure.
Yes. Yes.
Right. Well, Laura, did you have anything you want to add before we signed off for episode 7?
I don't think so. No more questions?
Looks like that's George Petrinos is George's last name. So, all right. Well, Laura, I really appreciate you joining and offering your expertise in the field. You certainly have seen it all, managing the 3rd largest program in the country. So, you guys have spent their tens of millions already for helping schools across the state. So we're thankful for what you've done for everything for the EANS program, and also how you've partner with us to help, bring some knowledge to some of these schools who may be struggling to spend their funds.
Yeah, well, we appreciate our collaboration with ClassWallet. So thanks, everybody.
Yep. And then one last thing, team, everybody on the call, you can always email EANS, EANS at ClassWallet.com for any questions about your account, or if you need to change a fiscal agent or have any questions about reporting or anything. We're happy to help in that arena. So thank you, everybody, for
Matt,
attending.
I'm
Yeah,
sorry. Can I just one more thing? I just remembered when you just said that. What I shared earlier about Learning Systems Institute and the disposition of equipment and the inventorying, I think it would be helpful if those of you on the call went into your ClassWallet accounts and just took a look at refamiliarize yourself with what you've actually purchased, because just to differentiate between the two programs, if you're in both of them, maybe you've received items through other grant programs. So I think it would be helpful to go in. I think there's a link on your login. Is it something forms that they can get to review? I can't remember. Sorry about that.
It's on the FLD homepage, but we can get it out to the team.
Okay, that'd be great. That would be very helpful.
All right, Laura. Well, again, thank you, and thanks for everybody participating. And we'll be back with another episode probably in June. So stay tuned, and we'll see everybody then.
All right, bye.
Bye, everybody.